Today I'm going to show you an amazing way to take textures and use them as wallpapers for your images. Hey guys, welcome to Flirn. My name's Aaron Nace. You can find me on Twitter at AKNacer. You can chat with me about this or really anything else. I'm a normal guy, so you can talk with me. How's that? Today we're going to do something really cool. We're going to take a texture that we found online. I'm going to show you guys how to repeat it in a texture to make a wallpaper that's going to repeat over and over and over again, be completely seamless, and then we're going to take that and actually apply it to one of our images. It's going to be very, very cool. Let's get into it. So here we've got our site that we're going to be using. This is from lostandtaken.com. Very, very cool. They've got this texture gallery, and we're in the wallpaper section right now. So they've got all these wallpapers, and what we're going to do, just make sure it says right here that they're made freely, they're available for personal commercial use, attribution is appreciated, so us doing this, and we're going to link to them below as attribution. Just be sure when you guys take this sort of thing offline that you are properly attributing whoever you decide to take things offline from. So what we're going to be doing is clicking on there, and then you can just right click and go to save this image, and you can put it on your desktop or whatever you want to do. Oh, we're just going to backpedal 1 second. Okay, so what we've done, I went ahead and I've already done that in Photoshop. So we've got this here in our, in our document in Photoshop. Now, this is a really cool texture, but it does have a lot of like vignetting and things like that going on in the image. So if we were to repeat this over and over again, it wouldn't look like a nice, like clean slate of texture. It would look like you would see all these patterns repeat, and it wouldn't look like, you know, the pattern itself wouldn't look like it was repeating. It would look like you took just this image and repeated it over and over again. So that's not exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a section of this pattern. We're going to find the section that repeats. We're going to take this and then have that repeat over and over again. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Very, very cool. Let's just zoom in, and I want to find an area that is relatively similar as far as like color and things like that go already. All right, I'm not looking for something like, I wouldn't take this area because it's so dark right here, so light up there. It has to all kind of blend together in a little bit. So find something that is you know, relatively clean to begin with. Okay. So this looks pretty good. We're going to start off right over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my marquee tool and find an area that is basically looks like it repeats. So I'm going to go from the top of this this little diamond here over to that diamond, and then we're going to take it to the top of these diamonds over here. So that's basically our strategy, is to find some area that we can, you know, pretty reasonably assume is going to repeat over and over again. There we go. So we're going from top of the diamond to the other diamond. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what we're going to now do is basically just get this on its own document. So I'm going to hit Command J on that, and that just duplicates whatever's in my selection to a new layer. Now to get it to a new document, right click and go to Duplicate Layer, and we'll just put this on a new document. There we go. So we have just that little file right there, just this patch, and it's on a new document. So just to test it out, I'm going to hit Command J on this, and that's just the duplicate layer, and see what it looks like when we duplicate it. So from the right to the left, looks pretty good. Top to the bottom, let's see how we're looking there as well. Pretty good. The pattern repeats itself in a nice way. It's not perfect. You could continue playing around with it, but for our tutorial, it's definitely as good as we need it to be. So what we're going to do now, basically, what we need to do is make sure that it matches. You know, if I'm bringing it over to the left, make sure it matches to the right, top, and bottom. So let's go ahead and just start off by placing it on the very top. And we can see, I mean, we want it to look completely seamless. Like that's the whole idea. Now the pattern I'm not so worried about. It's going to get really small, but this little line right there, I don't really want that line on there. You can see, like, you can actually see the line where it kind of crosses. So what we're going to do is create an adjustment layer, and I'm going to fix this on this layer, and then we're going to apply it and then do this over and over again. So we have to make these changes onto this document, and then we're basically going to apply those changes and then try retiling it and then see how that works. A little complex, but I'll show you. All right, let's make a curve adjustment layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I hit Option Command G, or you can also right click here and say create clipping mask. And that's going to make sure whatever changes I make on this layer, they only show up where this layer is actually visible. I don't want these changes to be visible everywhere. That won't help. I need it to be just visible on this layer. And we're going to just kind of work on this, you know, piece by piece here. So let's get that a little bit brighter. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Command I on my layer mask here, and that's just going to make it dark. And then we're going to paint with a white paintbrush just on the area we want to be a little bit lighter. Now, you don't have to go, far into your document. You just need the edges to be able to look like they're actually like repeating. So that's really good enough. As long as the edge, here you can see before, it's kind of a dark line, and we're lightening it up. That's pretty good there. You could even take it one step further, and if you wanted to, let's just create a new document. You could use a clone stamp tool to kind of clone stamp in. There we go. We're going to clone stamp in from here right up there. All right, there we go. We're going to do the same thing here as well. And what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that that exact texture from the bottom shows up where the top of this is now. Okay. Now keep in mind, we're using, this is technically it's the same texture, right? But what we're doing is we're using the top of this layer to blend it in with the bottom of this layer. So if I take this away, now the bottom of this layer should look like the top of this layer because it's the same texture over and over again, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of the original guy, delete that, and then I'm going to shift click the three of those and hit Command E. That's going to merge them together. All right, so now the test. We just hit Command J and we bring this all the way down to the bottom and we see, do they line up? Do they match up? And they do. You can see they look great. And the reason is it's the same texture, guys. It's the same thing that I just duplicated over and over again. So you make those changes on one when it's duplicated and then just delete the original one, apply them, and then try it again. So we'll do it again from the same left to the right. So I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate this again, and we're going to go over here to the right side now. Okay, now what I need to do is make sure that this layer looks the same as that layer over there. And let's just use, you know what, to make it easy, because I think you guys are going to find this to be the easiest, let's use the clone stamp technique. And we'll just kind of like blur this edge a little bit. There we go. Because you just don't really want to see hard edges. That's just going to be like the biggest thing that's going to give it away, is whenever you see like a hard edge. There we go. We're going to bring that in. All right. Looking good. And our pattern's not perfect here. If you do want to make a perfect pattern, just be sure to try a couple different variations from your original file, and that's going to help you make a perfect pattern. All right, I am able to fix it a little bit with our clone stamp tool, by the way. There we go. So just kind of fixing this edge, and instead of having it be a solid line there, it's just kind of blur in. Let's just shift click those two, hit Command E on that, and then we can just bring this in, and we'll hit Command J and bring this over to the side. And we'll see now it just really does line up, which is so nice. Let's take it to the other side and see how that works. All right, and the other side should be the exact same because it's left to right, left to right. So top to bottom should be lined up as well. All right, there we go, and that does look really good. So basically what we've done is we've duplicated some of the left side over to the right side and some of the top over to the bottom, so we get something that's just going to blend together really, really well. Okay, now how do we make this into a pattern? Well, let's just command click on this, and I'm going to go to image and then down here to crop. So we've got this area that's going to just tile really well because we just forced it to. So hopefully you guys can see kind of the difference between, we wouldn't want to use an area that's so dark and so light at the top. This is something that's going to tile very well because it's relatively even from top to the bottom, left to the right. This is not that even, so we're just taking one segment and kind of bringing it in. Okay, so let's kind of minimize that. So we went from this to this, already a really good step. Now, here's our background. This is by Francois, and Francois, you were in a Fleurn Pro because we're editing your image on Fleurn. So if you guys want your images edited on Fleurn, just enter them. We have contests every week, so you guys can do that too. And then you'd be really cool. And then I'll give you a shout out, and then I'll just talk about you in a way like this, and maybe you don't want to do it now. All right, let's put our background in. And I want this basically to repeat over and over again inside this document. First thing I have to look at is how large it is. So I'm going to use my move tool and click and drag over one from the other, and we can see it's huge. That's way, way bigger than I need it to be inside of this document. So we have two options. We can basically make this a little bit smaller, or we can try to make this larger, or make a new document that's very large, then pattern that in the new document, and then scale everything down. But for this tutorial, what we're going to do is make this guy quite a bit smaller. So we're going to go to image, and then we're going to go down to image size. And here, percent, you know what, I'm just going to choose 10% of the original size. And we're going to hit enter. So it's pretty small now, 10% of the original size. Let's shift click and drag over, hit convert, and there we go. That's going to be the size of the actual repeating pattern. If that's too large or too small, just hit the back button and try it again. But I think this is actually going to be all right. So that's going to be the size of the wallpaper pattern that's on the wall. So how do we actually get it to be a pattern now? So it's the right size, it's the right texture, it repeats. Go to edit, and then down to define pattern. So we're defining a pattern out of this wallpaper. We'll just call this wallpaper 5, because I've done this a couple times just to make sure it works well. So wallpaper 5, and we're going to hit OK. So now we've defined this as a pattern, and it's like, all right, well, where do patterns show up? Let's make a new layer, and I'm going to hit Shift Delete or Shift Backspace. You can also go up to Edit and then down here to Fill. Now, in a fill dialog, you probably are familiar where it says fill with foreground color, background color, anything like that. You can also choose pattern. So I can have it choose to fill with a pattern. It's going to fill the entire layer. Or if you have a selection active, it's going to fill just that. Blending mode will be normal, and you can choose things like scripted patterns to do like spirals and symmetry fills. We'll play around with that in a second, but for now we'll just use a regular pattern because that's really what we want. So I'm going to hit OK, and the custom pattern we want to choose is the very last one we created. You can see I've done this a few times. So the very last one we've created, and if you just hover over it, it should say wallpaper 5, which is 80 pixels. Okay, so we're going to choose that wallpaper 5, and I'm going to hit OK. And now we can see, if I just zoom in there, it did exactly what we wanted it to. It just duplicated that pattern over and over and over again. And we can see it really is very uniform. It looks great. I'm going to show you guys a couple other things. I'm going to hit Shift Delete. Here we're going to click on our scripted patterns. This is, I think it's new to CS5 or CS6, but if you have CS6, you'll be able to do this. You can click on things like symmetry fill, and it's just going to create like random spirals of these things. You can click on a brick fill, and it's also changing the color over and over again, which is totally annoying. But there we go. You can always hit Command U and then click on colorize to just to get it all back to the same color. All right, let's see what else we have. Things like a spiral. And apparently this is very hard for the computer. All right. So you can do all that sort of thing. It's not going to look nearly as natural. Let's just fill it back with the, turn that off and fill it back how it should be filled. But if you want to have fun, that's a great way to do it. All right, we're going to change this layer blend mode from normal down to overlay, and I'm just going to bring my opacity down. Now the next thing I want to do is make sure it matches up with our image, and I'll just quickly show you guys what we're going to look at. Pretend you're in a square room. All the lines that go horizontal, they all should be parallel, but because of perspective, they converge. So this line is probably parallel to this line, which is probably parallel to that line, but they're all converging at a point, somewhere way off in the distance. I don't know, we could probably figure it out. Somewhere way off in the distance, they're all converging. So when we create something like this, we want to be able to figure out how to get this texture to be able to basically follow those lines of convergence, and it's not hard. Hit Command T to bring up your transform dialog. I'll just see if we can make this way, way small. There we go. I'm going to even just kind of flip it around over there. There we go. And let's make that one a little bit bigger. There we go. So this is figuring out basically where our perspective lines meet. And this is a rough guess, but bringing it over there kind of gives us a little point in which they converge. And now I can kind of bring this over here, just like that, and they should all follow those same lines. So if you do a relatively rough job, bringing your lines in, then you can just, I'll do that again because you guys are probably like, what? Hit Command T, hold down Alt or Option, as well as Shift and, hold down originally Control or Command, okay, to grab one corner, and then hold down Alt or Option, and then Shift as well. Then go all the way back around, so you get it looks like an hourglass, okay? Then hold down the Control or the Command key till that little point that you've got there. There we go. To your little point lines up about where you decided to converge. And then hold down Shift and there we go. Hold down the Control key, rather, to kind of bring these up as well. Now, I did this very roughly, guys. This is not the point, was to make it perfect, but you get the idea. This is about what we want. All right, so a real rough job, and we can see there, it can be pretty rough, trust me. It's, as long as you have some perspective built in. But that's basically the idea. It's to like build in that perspective. Now we're going to hold down the, well, actually I'm not holding down anything with my keyboard hand. My left hand, also known as the keyboard hand. And now I'm just going to drag this back over there. And now we've basically got the perspective of the room built in to the actual perspective of the room, which is really, really cool. All right, now what I want to do is just kind of scale this. And if I am going to be scaling it, I can scale it up and down, just like this, and that's just going to fill my entire room. If I didn't want to scale up and down, basically my other options are to just make it quite a bit bigger. But if I make it bigger, I want to make sure that I'm making it bigger in a way that's going to allow the perspective to stay the same. All right, it just gets more and more complex, but it's not that bad. So just take your little control point and bring it over here, and then just make everything quite a bit bigger. There we go, and then we'll just kind of bring this back. There we go, and then we can bring this back in as well. So there we go. Quite a bit bigger, and then we're still going to stretch it up vertically and horizontally a little bit. All right, but this, because we have the same perspective built in, you can see it changes perspective as we go. There we go. All right, pretty cool. So that's our perspective, and we went ahead and applied it over top of our image. Now we're going to do a couple things to this. First, we need to layer mask it. So let's go ahead and make it invisible. I'm just going to do a relatively rough job layer masking this in. We're going to grab a polygonal marquee tool and just kind of click a couple lines of where this window sill is. There we go. Hit enter there. So it's just going to mask out all over there, right? Hold Alt or Option and click on the layer mask button, and we can see we masked that out now. I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to grab our magic wand tool and basically just hold down the Shift key and click anywhere like you don't want this wallpaper to show up. And in this case, anywhere where it's like kind of peeling like this is actually a pretty good little detail in there. So we're just shift clicking all these areas. Now I do have my tolerance set relatively low. We can see it's a 9, and the reason is because I don't want too much to be selected here. I really just want, you know, these little areas. I want to make sure I'm not selecting like, you know, the background or things like that. So keeping your tolerance low is a good way to only select out a small percentage of, you know, the image. It's just going to select where is, you know, visually similar to where you're clicking. All right, very cool. Let's bring that back visible again. Here on my layer mask, I'm going to hit Shift Delete. I'm going to fill these areas with we're going to fill it with black. There we go. And that's just going to make sure those areas do not have the texture applied to it either. Very cool. All right. A couple of other things. We're going to grab an adjustment layer. I'm going to go to Curves. I'm going to hit Option Command G, and what we're going to do is we're going to lower our contrast, and you do that by making your darks brighter and your brights darker, and that just kind of lowers your contrast. And because this is a low contrast image to begin with, that needed to happen, or it was just going to look really weird. All right, next thing we're going to do, I'm going to layer mask over our subject, because it would look really weird if there was wallpaper all over our subject. So that one's, I think, a pretty no-brainer. If I have to explain that to you, then, well, I'll just do it anyway because I'm a nice guy, but you might want to start at the beginning of Flurn.com, which would be a good use of your time anyway. But we're layer masking it away from our subject because she's in front of the wallpaper. Aha! And we don't want it to be visible there because she's in front of it. And when some things go in front of other things, you can't see the things that are behind those things. That's your physics lesson for the day. It's very technical, but I think you guys follow. All right. When things go in front of things, sometimes you can't see the things that are behind the other things that the things went in front of. Basically is what I'm getting at. All right. Looking good. So there we have our layer mask. This is what our layer mask looks like. It's a very rough job. It doesn't have to be that great, really. We'll probably do a little bit better. But basically, we've defined that we don't want it visible or where our window is, any of these little areas, and there where our subject is either. And here what we've got now is a texture, and we can still do things like lower our opacity. We can play around quite a bit. And I'm just going to bring in maybe like a 10%, bring in a large soft touch brush with a 10% flow and just paint it black a little bit over there so it's like a little bit less visible there towards the seam. So we're only going to do this one wall. Feel free, you guys can totally do the same. But basically you just want to match perspective. I went a little bit berserk on matching in perspective. You could just kind of match it and it would look totally fine, I promise. But you know, the better job you do there, the more realistic it's going to look. And there we go. It's definitely a realistic effect. I think it looks great. There's just one more thing I'm going to do on the top here. Let's see. We're going to create a new layer. I'm going to bring some shadows back over top. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Select and down here to Color Range. All right. And we're just going to grab that shadow color. There we go. Actually, you know what? I'm going to grab the shadow color that's right down here under this pipe. There we go. That shadow color. All right, and on this layer, I'm going to fill with this color here. It's kind of like darker color. So Alt or Option Delete to fill with that color. We're going to change this from a normal layer down here to multiply. All right, and let's bring this on top. I'm going to clip this so it's only visible where this wallpaper is. Okay, Option Command G to do that. There we go. And now we're just going to lower our opacity quite a bit. And that's just going to bring some of the shadow from like the pipe and other areas like that back over the top of the wallpaper. That's just going to help it look a little bit more realistic. All right, we're going to mask it away from areas like this. But down here where we have like the pipe and things like that, there we go. You can see it just looks more realistic. So that's it, guys. Bringing a texture from something we found online, taking one part of that, defining it into a pattern, bringing it into this, warping, controlling, and masking it and bringing it so it looks like it's a texture on the wall of this image. It's a lot to learn, but I think you guys are doing all right. Thanks so much for watching Flirn, guys. If you would use this technique or any of our others, please post them in a comment down below. I'd love to see it, and keep on flirning. I made that up just now. What do you think? Knowledge is power.